Hello everybody, I'm Tom Daniels and we at Esports Insider are here in Chengdu, China, where we are covering the CrossFire Stars 2023 event, a global tournament for CrossFire. This coverage is brought to you by Smilegate, the developer of the game and also the tournament organizer who helped make this entire thing happen. In this episode in particular, we're going to be talking about the European esports CrossFire scene with LCK player LionClaw. So he is a Portuguese player who had a stint in Valorant, CrossFire, and why he kind of came back to that title is really interesting. Some really interesting insights in the development of the scene in Europe and MENA, and his thoughts on how the scene will develop in the future. It's a really interesting conversation, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. LionClaw, it's a genuine pleasure to speak to you. We've already spoken a little bit behind the scenes, but yeah, I really want to dig into the fact that we are here in Chengdu, China for CrossFire Stars 2023. And you're not a Chinese player, you're not a Brazilian player, you're someone from Portugal, from Europe, representing a Turkish team. Firstly, just how did that occur? Because from what I've been reading and what I've been seeing from people, it's very much like big in China and big in Brazil, and then in Europe and North America, it's a little bit lower and less known. So how did your journey kind of begin in CrossFire?
So my journey in CrossFire started back in 2012. I started playing online when the Europe beta came out. And I started playing with some friends. Then I started competing because there were some local events in my country. I started developing my skills, and even though it wasn't as big as CS, it was still a big title. I enjoyed a lot playing the game. And yeah, it just went natural after that. I wanted to play even bigger events, getting known, and challenging myself always. So yeah, that has been my path throughout the years.
And how have you found the kind of the ecosystem change then in Europe from when you're doing it? Because I believe that you started playing, was it like 2016 or something like that? And then obviously we'll talk about the little bit hiatus later of what happened then, but you've obviously then came back in 2023. How have you seen this kind of ecosystem change?
So first of all, when I started playing, we were only playing small cups. Mm-hmm. We are talking about like 100 euros, 200 euros, like very small, like grassroots cups. Just, everyone was a kid, mm-hmm. Like the older people was playing CS. So it was very nice back then. It was the best days, loads of fun. Then in 2016, then it started getting a bit more professional. We got our first pro league. It wasn't still as big as today, but it was a step forward into the development of the game. And nowadays it's totally different. We are talking about a game that in Europe, some countries can already play fully professional, and it's a well-established league in our region that gives some slots in higher competitions like CFS Summer Vietnam and the Grand Finals. And all the teams are looking forward to that, and the league is highly competitive right now.
And what do you think is needed then to kind of make the league more recognizable and more known then within Europe, just from the years of you kind of, watching it and playing it?
I think that despite our region not being as developed as China and Brazil, Smilegate have always an interest in our region, because our version of CrossFire is one of the oldest to exist, and it still has its player base, especially in Egypt. And yeah, they really like our region. They want us to be good. They want us to be comfortable, and they give us this nice league to be able to showcase our skills in international events. And yeah, every year European teams come and try their best.
So I want to talk about your little stint in Valorant as well. So you were playing for the Win Esports in VRL, which is the Valorant regional leagues for Portugal. How was that experience from going from CrossFire to Valorant and then ultimately back to CrossFire?
Well, going to Valorant was not easy, because CrossFire was not as developed strategically as CS. So there was a clash when it comes to the understanding the game. I switched it pretty early, so I had some upper edge at the beginning, especially when compared to the people from my country. So I had a bit of an advantage at the beginning. So it was a nice transition for me. But then I started, my game was CrossFire. Even though I was enjoying Valorant, I really didn't like how Riot was working out with the tier 2. So for me, it only made change switching back to CrossFire, as also a lot of my friends that switched were switching back again. So for me, it was a pretty easy decision coming back, and I don't regret it.
And then obviously, then in the first year of you coming back, you ended up qualifying to go to Chengdu. How have you found the difference in like the atmosphere and the fandom actually going to Chengdu in China compared to what it is when you've been competing regionally within Europe?
Well, first of all, I think the biggest difference is like in Europe, even in my country, if I go outside, nobody recognizes me, But here in Chengdu, sometimes we are hanging out with other teams, and some people ask for pictures of the players, Sometimes NA players, other times EU players. So like, even though we may not be really known in our countries, in China it is really big. They know actually the Brazilian players, the European players, the Chinese players, obviously. So like in China is like the real deal. It's like really big. So I think Chengdu is a great place to host a tournament like this, and yeah.
And so finally then, what I really want to ask you is what do you think could be kind of done to further push like the scene, in the EU MENA region then? What do you think is kind of needed to take it that step further?
I think the main reason, the main improvements that we should have is we should have more LAN events. So we are lacking high-tier LANs in Europe, and we are lacking smaller LANs in Europe. So in China, you have all type of LANs. You have smaller and bigger ones. Even the biggest events of the year are usually in South Korea or in Vietnam or China. I think Europe is lacking like big LANs to get the attention of some people. And I think the game, because even though the game is not that known in Europe anymore, 10 years ago, a lot of people were playing in Europe. It was decently known. So I don't know if it can come back to the levels that, it reached before, but I truly believe that it can improve for sure.
Yeah, do you think it's sometimes surprising that the game is, I think it's like 14 years old, and yet it's still like, trying to develop and find its way. It's quite fascinating to see a title, obviously stand the test of time for 14 years, have developed, these other ecosystems and are still trying to push on for that, right?
Yeah, to me it's crazy to look at CrossFire and just, the market has been developing a lot. You have Valorant, you have Apex Legends, you have CS, you have Overwatch 2, you have so many games coming out. And to me, it's so impressive that in a country like China, CrossFire can still be the biggest FPS by far. And with a game that, it's getting older, but if the game is old like this and it still can hold is public, I truly believe that people love it and it still has some years to go.
LionClaw, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and hopefully we can do it again next year. So
hopefully.